Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. This week, Kyle climbs a mountain, I go on a road trip, we talk to Volkswagen about ID Buzz pricing, and Subaru has an interesting new trademark. But first, a word from our sponsor. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, so we'll get into it with Kyle's adventure up the mountain. I know we've talked about this a bit, but now the article is live, and maybe you can get into more how these two vehicles handled the situation and the one upgrade you made to the Land Cruiser that made all the difference.
Yeah. So the big change here, as Mike mentioned, we did talk about this previously, but now the video is out, and I highly encourage people to go check it out on the YouTube channel because it's a really fun video for us to do, and there's a lot of really stunning visuals that really only translate in video. But yes, the Land Cruiser, as someone already pointed out in the comments, is not entirely stock. So this is the prototype from Toyota Canada, and it's based on the first edition, though it is missing the roof basket. And Toyota, in preparation for this adventure, swapped out the stock tires, which are fairly pedestrian all-terrain ones, and went with KO2s.
Yeah, and it looks way more badass with KO2s. And
it does.
And there's like, you look at what their first models are going to be, like there's a big gap. Where's the TRD anything? Like they have on the Tacoma and the Tundra. So you know this something like this is coming. So I can't wait. If they jack it up, put on KO2s and do a couple of little things, the Land Cruiser is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and that was the thing is it was very capable. And you know, we all talk about how, it's smaller, it's not as capable as the old ones. That might be true, but also it's still more than capable for what most people are ever realistically going to use. We never had an issue with what it could clamber over. The toughest thing we had was that it just lacked the ground clearance of the Tacoma, which has an extra couple inches. But of course, then the Tacoma had the drawback of being as long as a bus, and thus, approach and departure angles were a little tougher on it. So it was a fun way to compare and contrast the two. Not that we went into it doing that, but I mean, we spent a lot of time between both. I think they're really fascinating vehicles, and I think Toyota is, doing this the Toyota way, right? It's hybrids instead of big V8s or anything else, and we enjoyed it, but we didn't quite accomplish our mission.
Yeah, you may need some big winches. It's too bad it's a little low because, as we all know, a couple inches makes all the difference. So I wonder how the Land Cruiser would off-road with the stock tires. If only we do a comparison like that down the road. Oh, wait, we are.
Yeah, weird.
But yeah, like the snow you're in, I saw, I mean, you could have probably made it, but it would have been a lot of work. And like I said, you need winches or something because inevitably one's going to get stuck and you got to pull it with the other or winch off a tree or something. So yeah, it's not worth it when it's not your car.
And that was the thing, is like, it's a prototype. We're across the country, and what really sealed it for us, we talked to some very friendly locals who offered us chains. That might have gotten us a little further, but just past where this image, for those who are watching the video, where we stopped, just past there, the snow got right up to the edge of the trail, and that trail, or that edge, is just loose rock. Like, I would walk on it and it would crumble a little bit, so putting a car there would not be a good idea. And then about, I'd say maybe 400 500 feet beyond, the path kind of curved to the left towards, like, inward towards the mountain, and we had no idea how deep it was from that point on, right? Like, we could see the top. We were nearly there. We probably could have, if we wanted, got out of the vehicles and literally walked to the top. It would have been maybe a 40-minute hike. But
Could
we
have
couldn't
planted
take
the
the
AutoGuide
trucks.
flag. Could have put the AutoGuide flag on top of the mountain. It would have been
Left
ours
it there.
forever.
Yeah. Next year.
Well, if something did happen, I mean, Toyota Roadside, I'm sure would come help you out. They just, drive up there and
in
pull you
a
out.
trail hunter. Yeah.
In an old Land Cruiser. All right.
It
Well,
was a lot of
sounds
fun.
like a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one thing you can definitely say in comparison is the Land Cruiser's the better vehicle to sleep in.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the one I would choose to sleep in. Although I guess the bed in the Tacoma would be okay, as long as you don't mind bears maybe crawling in with you.
Yeah, and not up as high as you were.
Yeah.
Hey, moving on to the next one. So our patent sleuth has found another trademark. I believe this one is also over in Japan, and it's for the Outback. And this is one of those, well, of course, it makes total sense that it's coming, but it's good to see kind of it is coming, or at least the concept, and the name makes sense because other regions, they've had Forester hybrids forever and Crosstrek, and we've had the Crosstrek here twice in different iterations using Toyota tech to help it out. But Forester. Subaru said last year the Forester is getting an in-house built hybrid next year. Like probably like I would assume we're probably going to see it in LA or Chicago or New York at the absolute latest. So Subaru's a historic manufacturer of 3, 4, 5 engines at most. Right now they have the 2-liter, the 2.5, the 2.4 turbo, and the 2.4 and the BRZ. Making the Forester hybrid, I would assume it's going to be an option on top of the 2.5 because there's no higher engine. But I think it would just eventually replace it, and then it would go in the Outback as the entry level engine before the turbo. And yeah, like it would probably also make its way maybe into the Crosstrek one day. And just the way Subaru is, like if they want to phase out that 2.5, which is sort of their old engine, it just makes sense. Like I don't know what they'll use, maybe the 2.4 NA, maybe the 2-liter something, but expect it to take over.
So as not a Subaru fanatic, when I looked at this, I assumed it meant an EV because they're not going to call the hybrid Forester e-Forester. So that's what I took this to mean, and I was really hoping that they'll lean into it down the road, and they'll have a really fun commercial where it's like Outback.
I mean, it could be for the concept, but historically, they call their hybrids e-Boxers. The little e and then the Boxer. So
yeah,
you're right. I don't know if they're going to call it Outback, but that might just be a concept. Might be the I don't know. But you're right. I mean, if the next EV they're making, which apparently is also going to be in house and not Toyota with a new grill, maybe that'd be cool. E-Forester, e-Crosstrek, Outback.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually you can just shed that off when it's no longer necessary, right? And just go right back to Outback. I think keeping the Outback name is a smart move because that is arguably the flagship of Subaru's lineup.
It's the name, yeah. It could be a whole different model, and you're just sort of like the Mustang and Mustang Mach-E. You're just kind of banking off the name. But an e-Ascent would be cool, because then could you call it the e-Cent?
E-Cent?
All right, I'm on that note.
Yep. Let's just move on.
On to another road trip, very different than yours. I did not climb a mountain, and it was very hot instead. I took a Pathfinder from where we live in the Toronto area out to Connecticut to Lime Rock to watch the Sentra Cup. We talked about that earlier. So we loaded up the family. We drove there in a single day, about 8 hours each way when you include stops. I did it literally 3 days after I got back from being in Connecticut with the Genesis GV80 from other road trips. So yeah, I really got to know upper New York and Maine and Massachusetts, and but I was impressed. So we drove in Pathfinder in our big comparison, I guess it's a year and a half ago.
Year and a half, yeah.
And we had the Rock Creek, and we said the Rock Creek was cool because it looked cool and it drove the most truck-like compared to everything. And this here's the Platinum, and I was surprised at how much the trims make a difference in the vehicle. So this drove a lot like the other 3-row crossovers we drove. Would it be the best? No, I think drive wise it's somewhere in the middle. Interior space and comfort, it's probably also in the middle. Exterior styling, I mean, that's personal taste. I think it's nice, but it's a little bland. But the fuel economy I got was unbelievable. I should have looked up the official figures before this um, podcast, but I believe on the highway it's rated at like 25 or 27 miles per gallon. And on the way there, after 400 miles, I was averaging almost 32. And when I came home after 800 miles of, I'd say like 700 were interstate, but going like 70 to 80 miles an hour. And the other 100 were back roads where you're doing like 40.
Mhm.
I ended up at 30.7, I think. So assuming the computer could be trusted, and there's the debate about that, I can't imagine it was that far off. So yeah, that's what impressed me is it's a wholly capable family car. 8 hours, no one complained about comfort, and if it's getting that kind of mileage, then yeah, this is a great vehicle for that because the lane keep and all that technology work pretty well too. So it's just sort of one of those set it and forget it. It's for people
Mhm.
who need to cover a lot of distance and don't want to be bothered with, you know, medial driving tasks.
Yeah, I like the Pathfinder. I agree with you where I'm not really sure it's a category leader, but it's very good and it's much better than the one that it replaced. Um, what I am curious about, knowing that you got such great fuel economy, we know that its sibling, the QX60, which we also really enjoy, is getting a new engine for next year. It's getting the variable compression 2-liter turbo, which is a whole other subject. So I wonder if Nissan will be putting that in the Pathfinder or keeping it as the V6, because the V6 is, it runs on regular fuel. It's a simpler, common engine, so it's easy to fix. Like I'm very curious to see what Nissan does with the facelift for this, which should be happening in the next year or so.
Yeah. A 2-liter obviously in the QX is going to be all-wheel drive, so maybe the Altima can finally get it because that's the car I've been waiting to drive.
But the Altima's dead next year.
Shh, one more. A going out party.
Ultima Nismo, 1 year only.
Bring back Maxima with that engine and all-wheel drive. It could be the GTR replacement and the Maxima and the Ultima. You could call it the Maxima GTR.
Spec V.
All right. Yeah. Moving on to the Buzz. We're going to talk more in depth with this with Volkswagen America, but
sorry, okay? We have sirens right outside my building.
Is everyone evacuating your building in a hurry? Are you okay?
We seem okay.
All right. So the Buzz, we got more details. We know pricing. We know range. We know sort of roughly what trims are coming and some cool colors. And we'll get into the sort of the colors and stuff with Volkswagen, but a lot of people are freaking out about the price. Standalone, like, no, like this is how much EVs cost. If you thought the bus was going to show up at like 40,000, you were always dreaming. When you include it with the range, I get to see the argument because the range is pretty low on this vehicle, especially something that's like a multi-person, which is going to take a lot of weight or tow and
do road trips.
Yeah, and you don't have much range to begin with, and you're going to hamper it the more weight you put in.
Well, yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, yeah, I was very confused when I saw people freaking out about the price. I'm like, what did you think this was going to do? It lines up with the EV9, which is, one of the most sought after and highly regarded EVs of the last year, and it's one of the also only 3-row ones out there as well. So like, I don't see that, but the range is not great.
Yeah, like the EV9 can probably do some road trips. I mean, 230 miles, let's say, on a low end, that's still a decent distance in a day.
You're still stopping like around when that ends anyway. You probably should be.
We're probably stopping before that. That's a long drive. But anyway,
yeah.
This is much bigger than the EV9 inside because it's, I know they hate the term, but it's a minivan. It's an electric minivan. It's got sliding doors. So if you're looking for, you have, 3-4 kids, or you're constantly shuttling your kids and their friends to, football practice, hockey practice, whatever, and it's mostly a city car to commute and stuff, this makes total sense. But if it's sort of the one all family car that also got to go to the cottage or weekend road trips, maybe not. I mean, again, we'll get into it more with Volkswagen. I want to ask about the demographic, but I feel this vehicle is going to be bought by such a wide range of people. Initially it's going to be half novelty, half usefulness. So I don't know. I'm just surprised the range is so low, especially having the biggest battery, but something they could maybe work on.
Well, Yeah, and I mean, while it does have a big battery, it's also a big vehicle. Its battery is smaller than the EV9s.
Mhm. I just say it's
So
Volkswagen's biggest, but you're right. Like you need
mhm.
a 90 or 100 in there, and then everything's solved.
Yeah, I think it's a 91. Uh, although I don't know if that's gross or net. But either
For
way,
this,
for
this
this,
or for the, I thought it was 70 something.
no, it's 91.
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah, so like, but I do find it interesting that the all-wheel drive and the rear drive are basically the same in range. You lose 3 miles, so that's handy. But I'll
Drift
leave the rest
bus.
for when you talk with VW later on the podcast because
Yeah,
people will get more from that.
I do discuss drift bus. I think there's a market there. All right, so moving on, another road trip. Wow, we really put the miles on this year. So
We did.
you and podcast guest host, I guess is the
Yes,
best
yeah,
way to
yeah.
say it, and constant contributor Jeff Wilson, you and him spend a lot of time driving a lot of Toyotas over a lot of distance.
We did. Yeah. I don't think any of us really knew how much distance we were going to be covering when we started the Kenreki. So we've talked about this on a previous episode, I believe. Kenreki is his 60th anniversary in Japanese culture. Toyota Canada is celebrating 60 years in Canada. And so they are doing an incredible across the country road trip. It's divided into 5 or 6 different waves. Journalists are on each one. We did the first one, so it was a kickoff. We got to go to the easternmost point of Canada and then slowly make our way, maybe not super slowly, make our way to Halifax. And yeah, we drove a variety of vehicles. Funnily enough, Jeff and I ended up in the Land Cruiser again for at least part of it.
Getaway.
Nope. And it was the same one. It's the exact same one that has already went across Canada twice. So that thing is racking up serious miles. But we also drove the Crown Signia, and it's one of those vehicles that I like more and more. But really, the point of Jeff's article, because we talked about this on the drive, about how to approach a story like this, right, in a way that makes sense for all of us, even the folks listening from the U.S. who are like, Canada, like, how's this relevant?
The Americans have to do with anything.
Toyota really stressed that it is the only automaker out there who still has a full car lineup. If you want multiple different sizes of cars, they have that. They have 10 different crossovers and SUVs currently. They have a mid-size truck and a full-size truck. They have a minivan. No one else is doing what Toyota is doing. And so it does put them in an interesting position, right? Where they can cater to just about any buyer. They have sports cars. They have 3 different GR models. The great thing about that is, you have someone wander into the showroom and you're going to have something that appeals to them. They said, even if that isn't, not everything can sell like a RAV4, right? Some things sell in much smaller numbers, but the point there is to hook people.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting point when you stop and think about it, how, yeah, like even the American Big Three, like they abandoned cars years ago. Yeah.
There's always been an asterisk for Toyota. Where's your subcompact car, Toyota? Where is the Yaris? It is gone. Well, it still exists, but not for us.
Funny thing about that, Toyota provided us with trivia while we were driving in the car. And so I was reading some of it off while Jeff was doing the driving. And Toyota points out that it's the only car company to offer a subcompact hybrid with all-wheel drive, and we were very confused by that. But that's because the Corolla qualifies because its back seat is so tight.
Because it's so tiny, yeah. That's not a good thing.
No, it's not necessarily a good thing. Although that was a vehicle that was on our lake as well, the all-wheel drive Corolla hybrid, and it's still just really good. Like the all-wheel drive to me doesn't really change things because it's a compact car with low ground clearance. But as an everyday, purely practical car, the Corolla hybrid has to be up there as one of the best picks because that thing's going to run forever and you easily get 50 miles per gallon without even trying.
Forgetting about the regular Corolla, the hatchback, I think, pretty much is a subcompact car, especially compared to so-called compacts today. Put it against a Civic or a Elantra and it looks tiny.
It's true. Yeah.
And to the Americans listening about this trip, saying, "Oh, like I've driven across the states many times." I mean, me personally, I have, but that's like 2,800 miles. Canada's like 4,700 miles. There's a big difference going coast to coast in the two countries. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
Alaska not included.
especially with Ontario, you have to go up and over Lake Superior, and that really adds the miles. So yeah,
Even from
it's
Newfoundland, you can't go across. You have to go down to get around the Hudson Bay, and then you got to come back up through Ontario.
mhm.
That's
So
why Canadians cut through the states.
yeah, so it's I think right now they're in the middle of the prairies somewhere.
Yes.
So 2/3 of the way done. Yeah, it's really interesting. The Signia and the Land Cruiser are two of the vehicles that are on every leg because they're prototypes. So who cares how much mileage they rack up?
Yeah, I believe they're near the Paris of the Prairies with the Wheat Kings and all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, moving on to our last news story because we're going on and on. Um, Dodge, who's the best company in the world for naming things, has made their Hurricane inline six turbo a crate engine, and they're calling it the Hurricrate. And it can come as either the 420 or the I think it's the 520. So basically, the upcoming Charger outputs, not the truck and not what's in the SUVs.
Mhm.
So it's interesting that they love doing crates. With the Hemi dead, I guess they've had such a successful market. They're putting this out. It's a little different creating a full turbo package, but
Mhm.
they must see a market for it. So good on them. Good for the aftermarket.
Yeah,
Anyway,
more engines to stick in project cars is cool. I'm happy to see that Dodge is still supporting that, even as it prepares its EV charger.
yeah. So that's it for news and features. We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we will have the question of the day, and after that, we will be talking to Volkswagen. eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, welcome back. We're not going to take too long with the question of the day because we have a lot still to get to today. So, based on our last news story and kind of an extension of last week, I thought it's interesting making the Hurricane engine because it's not like a Hemi that automatically think, oh, every muscle car Dodge has ever produced, stuff it in. So my question is, where would you put the Hurricane engine? But unlike last week with the Retro Mod, this is more for the, I wouldn't say budget, but the more sort of do-it-yourself or sensible modder. So it needs to go in something that you're not like taking a Civic and making it rear drive or, a minivan and making it all-wheel drive or something.
Something that could hypothetically accept it fairly easily. Not that we know the particulars, but yeah.
Yeah, like you'd have to fabricate a bit parts, but
Okay.
the general setup and chassis of the vehicle makes sense. So I have two that I've thought of. So since you just saw this question, I can start with my more extreme one. So my first and extreme one is what's always the answer? Miata. Shove this thing into a Miata. You probably have to get some sort of scoop to fit it all in, but we know small blocks fit in, but they're also much lower. But I think, the 520 in here, if you can somehow figure out the plumbing, and again, you have to do something with your hood. Maybe even just let the engine stick out of a cutout just to look cool. But 520 horsepower with all that torque. And yeah, yes, the V8 is still probably simpler, but hey, you could be the first to do it.
Cool. Okay, so I'll go next. I guess I'll go a more extreme one too, just to stay with you there, kind of match your speed. I thought about the popular drift cars like an S13 or a 350Z, something like those. But instead, I'm going to stick with Mazda, and I'm going to go with a car that you've owned. I'm going to go with the RX-8. Because
you're trying to make it reliable.
Well, that's sort of the thing is like, as much as I love 9,000 RPM, I feel like a reliable engine in an RX-8 would be pretty handy. It'll be turbo, it'll be rear drive. It's a cool shape and it's got that funky door setup. Yeah, I think that would be a really fun car. I don't even need the high power one. I'll do the 420. That's plenty.
as a previous owner, as you mentioned, I think you're gonna have even more hood issues because of the way that little rotary stuffed in there. You might even
Yeah,
have to like
probably.
extend the front, but hey,
Yeah.
someone put a Ferrari V12 in a not a BRZ, an FRS, so it can happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the sensible side, and this is the one that I think actually is pretty interesting, is I'm gonna go with the car that comes with an inline six, and it can be turbo or not. So you already got the space. 3 Series. I'm not even saying it has to be an M3 or an M4. Like, just
Oh.
if you have an old 328 or a 330 or even a 340 or a 335, any of those cars and the engine's cooked, or you just didn't like what it came with, but the body's in great shape, stuff this in. I mean, I know BMW folks are going to lose it over that idea, but you could have 420 or 520, which should be pretty reliable in a vehicle that was kind of designed for that setup, and off you go. Yeah, I think that it'd be a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, like an E36 would be the first choice, but even just the last 10 years, any of those cars get a high mileage 4 cylinder from the States that the body's still in good shape, and swap and go.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I hope mine qualifies as not too extreme, but this was the first one that came into my head when you mentioned this. I'm going with a Chrysler Crossfire.
Ooh, that also had a 6 cylinder, not inline, but I'm
Not an
sure you could fit
inline,
it in
but
there.
and like the German ties. So I'm kind of matching your speed again, a German-ish car. So it's an SLK underneath.
Still in brand.
I still think it looks cool. The Crossfire. Um, Putting a turbo V6 or turbo inline six in it would be wild. I'm not sure if it could handle it. And we might run into the hood issue that we've been talking about lately, but
Well,
no,
the
I
SRT had a supercharged six in it, right? So
true.
it's can fit the intercooler and some of the extra stuff. You're right, maybe the inline because it's longer, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, eventually that platform did take a V8. The SOK
Yeah.
did eventually get a V8 back, so I don't know. I think that one would be a fun one. I have no idea how much work would be required. I mean, in the
A
case of all
lot.
of these, but like that'd be cool.
You just gave me I had another idea that was a bonus, but on that vein, the Prowler. I just shoving that thing into a Prowler.
If you could fit that, that would be incredible.
I mean, it's inline, so it's skinnier, you'd think. But
Yeah.
the very last one, and we'll move on, is the Charger and stuff makes total sense. But I saw one the other day, and I thought, oh, the Pontiac G8, because there's so few GTs with a V8, but there's tons of V6s, and they were even
Oh.
rental cars. Like, they're still kicking around, not many, but especially in the southern states, you still find them. And then, shove that in, and you have a very weird car, and off you go.
And we won't even talk about my idea of the Dodge Aries. Just leave that alone.
That's not the right way.
Tube frame, everything.
I mean, if
yeah.
you're gonna do that, you get the Caravan. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
panel.
The Caravan would be cooler. All right.
All right. Well, this is the AutoGuide show brought to you by eBay Motors, and we are going to take a bit more of a break. When we come back, we are going to have Mark from Volkswagen to talk all things ID Buzz, and after that, we'll have Colum on to talk F1, and then Kyle and I'll be back to wrap it up. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle. And to this day, I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was Although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect, and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then, there was no eBay Guaranteed Fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
So I'm Mark Gillies. I'm the Director of Public Relations and Reputation at Volkswagen Group of America.
Thanks for joining us, Mark. We are going to talk about one of the most anticipated vehicles in quite some time. A lot of people can't wait for this to come on the road, like myself. It's the ID Buzz. It just looks so cool, and I can't wait to drive it. So this week, you released some more details on it, along with pricing. So there's a couple things in there that we want to talk about, if that's all right.
Yeah, look forward to it.
So first off, I mean, we know we're getting a slightly different Buzz, which is a little larger than what's over in Europe. And we saw that 2 new colors were introduced. Are those North American only?
For the moment, they are, yeah. So Candy White and Cabana Blue, and the other one is Candy White and Indium Grey are US specific only colors at the moment. It's a pretty interesting palette of colors. I mean, it's there's a bunch of 2 tones, and then there's a white and a silver and a black. And I kind of like the idea of one in black with dark windows and stealth look to it. But yeah, I mean, I think the color palette's really nice. Like, I really like the Mahi green, which is this sort of mid green. And I also, the other one I really like is the red and the silver. I think that's a really nice color scheme. But they're all very bright and vibrant.
Yeah, red, white, red, silver. That's a pretty classic look for the bus. Yeah, I think an all black one would actually look pretty nice. And you could either get contrasting white wheels, or you also get some dark wheels and be real stealth. But
could do white walls. That would be cool.
Oh yeah, I think you need like a light blue and white with the white walls, and then you really got that old sort of look to it.
Yeah, very surfer look. Yeah.
So being electric, it's obviously state of the art. It's got a lot of cool features, and one that kind of caught my eye was hands-free doors. Obviously, the sliding doors.
Yep.
Not a lot of competitors have that yet. How exactly does that work?
So basically, if you know the tailgates that you can put your foot underneath and just swipe it, it's exactly the same thing. So there's actually, I think, 6 ways of opening the side doors. You can just touch the door handle. There's a handle inside, then there's a switch on the B post. There's switches in the front, and then there's obviously on the key fob. But you can literally just go to the side of the vehicle and put your foot underneath where the front of the door is, and all things being equal, it should magically open.
Okay, I was going to ask, where is it? So it's underneath the handle, kind of up front of the door.
Yeah, I mean, it apparently the sensors reads pretty well, but my product marketing folks say it's best if you put your foot underneath the front of the door.
And yeah, you just mentioned something that every sliding door vehicle has. Is the greatest invention is having the door switches for the driver or the front passenger. Because if you have kids like I do, it's just so nice. You can hit the button and then get in and out. You don't have to go back and do it.
No, it's really nice. That's a good feature on the vehicle. And the other nice feature on the vehicle is the sliding windows in the second row. It's very Volkswagen. They don't just slide. They do this. They pop back and then they slide. It's the most cool German piece of engineering you will ever see. It's great.
Yeah, instead of just simply rolling into the door like everyone else does. You gotta. Reminds me of way back when Mercedes introduced some cup holder that like sprung up and turned into 360 and then sat down. It's like
Porsche did that with the original Boxster. It had these amazing cup holders, but they were too bloody small for anything.
Yeah. And like the 911 ones where I'm petrified to put anything in them sticking out of the dash because you don't want it spilling all over the car. But anyway, good thing you have good cup holders in the Buzz. So like I said, pricing came out. So we now have an idea of sort of the initial trims, and obviously there's a special like launch edition one. What is the demographic you're looking at? I know we talked about this many months ago, but now that you're all set with the lineup, is it still the same, or are you looking for different
I
people?
think it's a weird mixture. I honestly don't think you can pin it down. I think I've heard somebody contacted me from a writers collective in Iowa, and they've got 3 retired CEOs and their wives want to buy them and go on road trip. My hematologist, he wants one. It's, I would think that, if you're in Southern California, it would be the hippest soccer mom transport mobile on the planet. So I think it's really a very um, sort of eclectic bunch. I think it spans the whole gamut. There'll be people who've got young families, which will be great for. There'll be empty nesters. There'll be people who, okay, again, you come to older empty nesters who just want to go and stooge around and have fun and kick back. So I think it's very wide demographic. I mean, obviously the car is, it comes in at just under 60 grand in the US, and I think in Canada it's 75 or so in Canadian dollars. So it's a relatively well-heeled demographic. But having said that, as I always sort of predicate this, it's the same kind of money as a fully loaded EV9 Kia, and it's got a lot more space and it's a lot more distinctive as well. So I think it's sort of unique in the marketplace. There's no electric people hauler that's got this much space for both people and things.
Yeah, I get that. It makes sense. I was just thinking while you're talking there about other vehicles that kind of leaned on a retro look that worked, because we all know there's been a lot of retro cars that don't work in the
Mm.
market. I was thinking like when the first new Beetle came out, or when the PT Cruiser came out, those had same thing. Like you had such a wide range of people buying them for nostalgia, or because it's cool now, or it was the right size. So I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you touched on the price there. Uh, this will be, I guess, the highest starting price in the Volkswagen lineup when it's launched.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we literally refer it to the car as the brand halo. I mean, I think just because of A, the way it looks, B, I think in terms of the tech it's got inside, it's got the biggest battery, it's got a lot of horsepower, it's got a lot of pretty nice connectivity features. So I think, in terms, and it's got some very interesting interior treatments. I think it's really, the sort of apogee of what we can do as a brand. I mean, it's as I say, it really is the brand halo. I mean, we refer to it as the reimagining of the microbus for the electric age. So I think that's kind of, it sounds a little bit marketingy, but I think that's really what it is.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like you said, it's got the look that's the heritage of your company, and then it's got the highest price, and it's sort of the direction you're going with the EV. Um, I meant to ask this earlier, but I assume there's going to be a ton of accessories for this. Like I picture a surfboard rack on the roof is going to be up there for people in California.
Yeah, there's roof rails for sure. There's also, one of the things we have in the back is this thing called the flex board, which is a sort of basically it's a load floor that's as high as the seats folded down, so you get a completely flat floor when you fold the seats, and that's got some storage bins underneath. But I know we're looking at doing sort of a camping setup with a gas stove and a sink and all that kind of stuff. And then there's going to be some accessory cup holders, things like that. There's a lot of accessories going to be slated for this vehicle, because I think the accessories team had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, it's going to be, it's not a camper van, but you could kind of outfit it to be a camper van, because we're going to have things like awnings. When you fold the seats down, I mean, you can put a bloody great mattress in there. It's almost like a double mattress size.
Yeah.
So, that's why I say, it's kind of like, for me, I play with old racing cars. It's kind of, the perfect vehicle for me, because I can tow with it, light trailer with a light car, put all my crap in there, and if I needed to, I could camp. It's really, really nice way of doing it, and you can use it as an everyday car as well.
Yeah, it's not the most subtle car, and as we talked about earlier, people are buying it because they want it. So I could see a lot of them also wanting to personalize it. I'll wait for the stove, sink, and pop-up roof to come, like an ID Buzz Westphalia down the road, if you want to tell your marketing or engineer people.
I think we're working on it. Yeah, there's allegedly there's a California camper in the works from Germany, but I haven't seen it yet. So, and it's not in a product plan either, but apparently they're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, the Eurovans, they still kick around here, which is incredible with our rust issues because people just love them.
Yeah. No, I was looking at one of those recently myself, you know, and actually they're starting to get expensive if they're good.
Yeah, because people love them. It's like trying to go find yourself a diesel Golf right now, especially with a manual. Like, holy cow, those prices skyrocketed. Okay, so final question. There's going to be rear and all-wheel drive. Do you think the split's going to be pretty equal, being people in the South will want the rear, or are you expecting one to dominate more?
I think that at the moment we're looking at a take rate of like 60-40 all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive. You know, I think it's an interesting one. I think a lot of people think they need all-wheel drive when they don't, to be perfectly honest. But obviously, you're in Toronto. I used to live in the Midwest. I live in Virginia, where 10 years ago we got quite a lot of snow, but I haven't seen much since. But you know, if you're in Canada, you're in anywhere in the plains, anywhere in the northeast of the states. Yeah, you all-wheel drive is kind of I don't say must-have, but a very desirable have at the end of the day. You know, and I think in terms of performance, the all-wheel drive car, we're predicting a 0 to 60 times somewhere in the low sixes, and the rear-wheel drive about seven and change. So, and I don't think that many people are going to be that bothered about being able to sprint from 0 to 60 in the sixes in a people hauler like this. But you know, the mid-range is the thing that always gets you in an EV. You know, we've done some early loans with people who don't come on trips, and I was tooling around Raleigh with someone, and you know, the step off when you go from 50 to 70 on these things is always really impressive. I think all EVs are the same because you've got that instant torque. And you know, that's the kind of people like that kind of drivability. I think once they get used to electric cars and they get used to, you know, working out how you charge it and all that kind of stuff, I think for commuter vehicles or just general use vehicles, they're actually a better bet than gas cars. I mean, I drive a Golf R with a manual, but that shows you where I come from.
Yeah, well, you're saying like up in Toronto, all-wheel drive is king now that it's so widely available. I mean, I'm a glutton for punishment too. I've only driven manual rear-wheel drive cars all winter for most of the last decade, but someone who's buying a Buzz, I don't think would quite be maybe that inclined to being this person's trying to drift it around in the snow. So I could see all-wheel drive doing well in the snowy areas.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is the funny thing I say about these skateboard architectures that you get with the battery pack under the floor is the taller the build the vehicle, the kind of better it is, it's sort of antithetical to the way, you know, cars have always been built. But I was driving one in the UK a couple of years ago, the short wheelbase one, and you know, I've been driving a transporter, you know, the regular VW commercial vehicles transporter, and I thought it was pretty good. And I got in the Buzz, and it was like driving a go-kart compared to a, you know, 1970s Cadillac Eldorado. It was just so different. And so it was quite interesting. I think it's more fun to drive than you would imagine a big people hauler to be, and I think that's a corollary of the skateboard architecture and a lot of the weight being pretty low in the vehicle.
Well, now you really got me interested to want to try one, and I hope to by the year's end. We thank you a lot for coming on and discussing the vehicle. Got us some good information there, and we will have you back on. We got some new products, and hopefully we are in an ID Buzz soon.
We'll try and make it happen, Mike. Thanks very much.
All right. Bye.
Cheers then. Bye.
Welcome to another Formula One update of news and rumors. We have Colum Wood on again, and we have racing again.
Hey, almost so soon. It'll be, I guess, well, by the time this goes live, we'll have had the Dutch Grand Prix. So I'm very excited. Although I've got my in-laws here this weekend, so I've got to like try and find time between entertaining people and going to kids' birthday parties and stuff to watch it all. But I will absolutely find a way. So
Yeah, do it the way I do it pretty much every race. Is I tape it, well, record it, I guess, and then I watch it that night, and I have to hide myself from any sort of news or media for the entire day.
Oh, I do the same thing. So I have the F1 app, which is I really, they're not paying me to say this, but holy crap, it's great. Like I actually love because I go back and watch like old races, and I was actually watching. We're really on a rant now, but I was just watching. They have documentaries on a bunch of different drivers. I watched one on Juan Pablo Montoya, one on Jackie Stewart, just stuff I didn't know, and especially stuff from like Jackie Stewart that just predates me that I wouldn't know. But the Montoya stuff, I was kind of paying attention to F1 back then. And I've always I love Montoya's feistiness. If he came in and he really met Schumacher with the same sort of attitude. And I think that's why the two of them sort of exploded. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I'll be using the app and watching it sometime, late at night or early morning before everybody gets up, just to make sure I squeeze it in. So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I always have notifications off for that reason. So,
that's like my whole life. I have to I can't look at Twitter because I'll spoil it. I can't look at like Instagram because I'll spoil it. I can't even look at my work email because I get like updates from like the Mercedes press agency. And even, one day it's about a new SLS or something like that. And the next SLS has been around for a while, but and then the next day it's, oh, Lewis Hamilton. I'm like, oh, now I know stuff I didn't want to know. So basically you become, maybe it actually helps me be a better person. I spend less time on social media. So
maybe.
Sorry.
All right. So what are the big stories going on this week as we get ready to get back on the track?
We are getting there. So probably the most interesting, most current one is a new quote from Helmut Marko, who always seems to spit out great quotes, basically saying that, Liam Lawson will definitely be sitting one of our cars in 2025. So now you could take that to mean a Red Bull car, but I think he means the larger group, and it'll be an RB at the entry level. That's what I anticipate. I can't see him getting the move up to the big team right off the bat. That seems highly unrealistic. So
I agree, unless they liked what they saw, and like with Max, they just throw him in next year and kind of you learn from Max as you go. But I agree. I think it's an RB car. I think Ricardo's days are done probably. Interesting though would be, we all already assume Perez is going to get fired, so who's going to be in that car next year too? But before we get fully into that, just about Helmut, it must be so nice being so rich and being in a position that you can't be kicked out of, that you can just say whatever you want. And
I love it. Those guys, it's like you know this, like from the your many years of covering the auto industry, of like what the CEOs just say whatever they want, right? Like it's you go to when Sergio Marchionne was at the head of whatever it was at the time, FCA, Chrysler, whatever it was. And, you'd ask the PR people like, how about this? Oh, I can't talk about this. How about that? To ask the marketing people, oh, no comment on that. And then, you just randomly, the CEO just be like, oh, and we're building 6 of these next year, and they're going to be all these types and have this much horsepower. And everyone, and, I'm sure he just made everybody's, else at the company's life a living hell. But you go ask the PR people afterwards, and they'd be like, no, that's not true. It'd be like, really? Because the CEO just told me. He just told like 45 different journalists this is going on. So
yeah, I've been on that side of the world and watching presidents say stuff and seeing marketing and especially PR panicking. Just sticking with Chrysler, my favorite was, I can't remember the exact quote, but basically when the Chrysler 200 got discontinued finally, basically just threw the engineers under the bus and said something along the lines of like, we didn't design it right from the start. It was never competitive. It's like, that's nice.
Yeah, but it's true, right? It's like, well, it's not even, I don't even think it's throwing them under the bus. It's like, I mean, he gets the ultimate say in all that. If they screwed up, the buck stops with him. It sounds like a dig at the engineers, but really that's, he made the call. So yeah, it's gotta be fun to be in those situations. So
anyway, we're both certain Lawson. Well, Marco's certain Lawson's in a Red Bull family car. I would say like maybe 20% in the big car and 80 in the other one with the potential to move up. Um, so that's sort of one rookie off the table of this class of, well, two, I guess, if you count Bierman, right?
Yeah, and I think like Lawson, based on what we saw already when you put him in an F1 car, he was excellent, right? I think he could do a fantastic job. He seems to be the right package, and he didn't get stressed out about it all. So I think he'll do well. The other, I mean, there's as far as I understand, there's only one other real rookie confirmed for next year, and that's Ollie Bierman for Haas. And I'm, Haas has come a long way, but I think Bierman's going to find a big change between driving a Ferrari for a race and filling in for Sainz. I don't know if he'll really click, right? And I think it'll be a real struggle. Again, I think like we saw that with like I'm not a huge Mick Schumacher fan. I don't know that he really can hack it in F1, but the guy also got like the worst shot possible, right? Like we're going to stick you in a terrible car. You're going to try and overdrive it and then wind up in a bad situation every single week. And then you start, that spirals out of control. So hopefully, Bierman doesn't fall prey to that. He is very young, but other guys have been young and made a go of it. So
yeah, like everything you say, I've thought too. I mean, neither of us are in Formula One or really understand the inner workings and everything and how rare a seat is, but it just seemed weird with how young Bierman is that he jumped into Haas when he put him in a good car and he scores points, like first time ever. He's beating a bunch of veterans. So there's some reason he's taking this. I mean, we've hinted at before unofficial development teams. So maybe this is, race here for a couple of years, and if you once you get your feet on the ground, come up to Ferrari with Hamilton or something.
I'm sure that's the plan, right?
Sorry, not Hamilton. I meant Leclerc. Like Hamilton's whatever 3 years. You do Haas for 3 years, then you come up with Charles and
actually that's nice for him that there's a plan in place, right? Of we actually are going to move you. We know that Hamilton has a limited time here, and actually it's probably good because, I mean, if Hamilton was a few years younger. Ferrari wouldn't be changing either of those seats for a long time, right? So, although we'll see, I'm fascinated to see how the Hamilton Leclerc things works out because again, when Leclerc came to Ferrari, he was like the chosen one, even though they had Vettel. They just, they kind of pushed Vettel aside right away, and we're like, he's the chosen one who was putting all our resources behind him, and that's not going to be the same Hamilton attitude with Hamilton. Hamilton's not going to come in and be like, it's okay that he's not coming in as a second driver, right? Like if anything. He's coming in as the first driver, and Leclerc's going to have to deal with that situation. And it could be we see Leclerc make a lot of mistakes, so it could destroy him for all we know, right? But I think he's better than that. I just don't know that he'll have a great couple of years. So,
I mean, look at Hamilton and Russell. I mean, they seem to get along, but when Russell's outperforming him for so long, it raised a bunch of questions of like, what do you do with the team? And I think you're right. I think Charles was the one, and then he hasn't performed as good as Verstappen and some of that other sort of class, but I don't think the car's as good, so it's understandable. And I don't know if they're going to make a huge change next year. It's really going to be 26, as we keep saying. But I like how we already assume Perez is fired, even though nothing's happened, and we assume Bierman's on this track to get into the Ferrari seat. Even though
we're just predicting everything. That's what we do. No problem.
Let's predict some more then.
So again, Kimi Antonelli is not officially signed for Mercedes, but that seems like a no-brainer, right? I really don't know much about the kid, so he's doing okay in the lower series, but I we've seen it happen before. He seems to have the right package. He could come in at Mercedes and things could go. I mean, it looks like he's coming in at the best time, right? They seem to have their poop back together, right? So. If they can build a good car and he can get there, he could be in great shape. So
I think it's one of those, give him 25 to, learn the sport and then really go for it in 26 to the new car. I think a lot of teams, maybe it's not like they're the first to do it, but are looking at the success McLaren's not having, where they have two, youngest drivers, one with experience and one's just off his rookie season. And as long as they can keep them signed, they could have that power team for a long time. So maybe Mercedes wants to do the same with George.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Like they need to, they needed to make a bold choice, right? Hiring. I mean, they were never going to take Sainz. They weren't going to just get somebody else's sloppy seconds, right? It's not going to work. Get the guy that Ferrari turned down for your guy. So that wasn't going to work. But yeah, and beyond that, like looking at like the rest of the driver, like these potential rookies, right? There's Jack Doohan is potential for Alpine, and then Kick-Sauber/Audi is still this huge list of Robert Schwartzman, Gabriel Bortoleto, Alex Palou. I'd love to see Alex come in from IndyCar, and I think that would actually, if he could come in and do well, it would actually say great things about the IndyCar and actually probably lift that series as well. So I'm curious about all of them, and I can't say I know one who will perform better than the others, right? Like I like what I've seen from Lawson and Bierman so far, right? That they've had some time under their belts, and I do think that there's if you can get in and get a good team that's not just like a good car, but also a good team that can adapt the car to what you need it to be to succeed, because every driver is different. I think that's one of the most important things, and sometimes I think that's where the drivers who wind up at these lower teams can fail, right? Is you wind up at a bad team, they basically, the car's not competitive, and then the team basically can't make it competitive-ish for you, and then just end up going backwards. So I really feel like if you were a Formula One driver and you were like, we can get you a ride next year, but you're going to be on one of the bottom teams. Like that used to be like a stepping stone of getting into the bottom teams and be like, okay, I'm going to go here for a couple of years and then move up. But there's this excitement, it seems, behind newer drivers, younger drivers, this ability to choose them. And it seems like they're just not going to, like, it's almost damaging your future. You're better off to set out, to be like, I'm going to sit out and do sports car racing until somebody in one of the Big 10 teams, but one of the Big 5 teams, at least 4 teams, is going to actually pony up and put you there, because otherwise you look like a schmo. So
yeah, I mean, like we were said with Bierman just a little bit ago, like it's surprising he went there, but if there's a plan, there's a plan. I mean, 2 years ago you had Piastri come in and you had De Vries come in, and one of them's thriving and one of them didn't make it through the season, and part of that is the teams they were on.
Yeah, that seems to be the way, right? Like would Mick Schumacher have had a very different setup, right, if he wasn't at Haas, right? If they, like, I don't know.
Remember, he's still sitting at Mercedes, I think, as their test fill-in driver. So maybe he jumps in that seat all of a sudden, just out of nowhere.
Well, that's been one of the big, not the Mercedes seat, but the big rumor has still been him for Alpine. So, but I think Alpine will go a different direction. So
speaking of Alpine, I wonder how much Alpine sits there and thinks, we had Piastri signed. I swear we did, even though they never did. Because, but then again, maybe he would not be doing as well in that car, especially the car this year. So
he wouldn't be, and even if he was killing it, he'd be like, even if you were like this is what we've seen. Maybe the best example, and we've had a little taste of what he can do already, is Alex Albon, where he's like, that guy is wheeling the hell out of a Williams, and getting like 8th, and it's like he's only just staying on the radar because he's just driving the wheels off of that thing, and. If you, like, realistically, if you moved Albon to Ferrari or Mercedes right now, he'd be winding up in the top 5 all the time.
Yeah, he was on Red Bull too early. Like, they brought him to Red Bull too young, too early, and gave up too fast. But you're right, like Russell before him, same thing. Williams, he was doing so good in that car for what it was. You could see the talent. That's about the only way it works. So maybe Bierman's hoping, if he can get points consistently and the other cars where it normally is, then others might be like, oh, this guy's got some real talent. Yeah,
it'll be good. I'm stoked for Dutch GP. See what happens.
Or already happened.
Already happened. I'm speaking of the future. I'm very excited to. It feels like the longest 4 or 5 weeks or whatever it was. Big long summer break. So be good to get into some routine and get some F1 back on TV.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have you back next week. And at that point, the first race will be done. And we'll see if anyone made big strides or regressed big time in the summer break.
Or if Paris still has a seat.
Yeah, that too. All right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Well, that was an interesting F1 chat. And as we've said, this week, racing's back. And when this airs, we'll have known what happened. But before then, we don't. However, we're taping the rest of this a bit late, so I do know Lando got pole by a lot. So you're just hoping he dominates tomorrow. Anyway, so what's next? What have you been driving this week, Kyle?
This week, I have been driving a pair of vehicles. The practical one is the Porsche 968 convertible, and the exotic one is the Kia Sorento. Crap.
No, I think
Uh, yeah, so both of those, interesting in their own ways. We're doing a feature and a comparison. Yeah, and I really like the Sorento, but unfortunately, well, Mike, what are you driving?
I'm driving two cars that are very similar too. I have the Hyundai Santa Fe, which is obviously being compared against the Porsche. No, wait, it's being compared against the Kia. So we got all new and highly refreshed in that sort of small 3-row category. So it was interesting. We won't get into the details, but it's interesting. And with your 968, I have a 1990 Miata MX-5 first year. Now we're not comparing them because they're very different, but the point was we're doing a feature about 90s convertibles, and we won't get into too much details other than don't discount the 968. I know most people don't know it existed, and when you do, you're like, oh, why? But yeah, anyway, we'll get into that more in future. We have videos of both, and we'll have articles of both. And then next week, because we're gluttons for punishment, we are doing 4 cars again. So we have the very exotic comparison of the Subaru Forester against the Nissan Rogue.
That is not next week, Mike. You are getting ahead of yourself. We have something else this week.
Oh, it's only 2 cars.
It's only 2.
Yay. So you are grabbing your personal favorite car of the year, I think.
It's true.
Ioniq 5N. We haven't had it for a week yet. You did the first drive overseas, and that's been sort of our time with it. And not so much a direct comparison, but sort of not a comparison you're going to cross-shop them because that's just crazy, but a comparison of how much performance Hyundai is offering and does it match up is we have a Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT. They make similar horsepower. They weigh similar weight. Prices are very different. Luxury is very different, but we want to see is how much has this Ioniq sort of matched? We're not going to track them or anything crazy because the end probably will get tracked a bit. The Cayenne never would, but it's more sort of does it give you that same special feeling or not, and how do they just compare in terms of is EVs the absolute future, and does it kind of make a big V8 redundant? I mean, I kind of think I know my answer personally. But we'll see.
Yeah, and as someone who's driven the Cayenne Turbo GT and really enjoyed it, the pre-facelift one, yeah, it's going to be interesting because I did not expect to like the Ioniq 5N as much as I do. Yeah, it's going to be a fun contrast. It's not, like Mike said, it's not a direct comparison, but it's interesting to see 2 different approaches that end up sort of the same from the driver's seat, at least in terms of straight line performance and fun.
And you track the end like a lot of people did on that event, and everyone came away like super positive. And now seeing people who have never driven it having it for the week, they're still pretty impressed. But people who have driven it now driving it around here, it's sort of, does it keep that shine when you start dealing with every day? Like obviously it's a track monster, it's designed to be that. Whereas that's sort of what Porsche's done with a lot of their high end, even their 911s, but they're so streetable as well as trackable. So,
and just before we wrap up, there will be another short drive for me elsewhere because when this goes live, I will be on the other side of the continent driving the new Volvo EX90, which I've been really looking forward to. What's that?
Another 3-row electric.
Exactly. The world needs more of them. So I am very curious because it is not a replacement for the XC90. But it is a big new electric flagship. And we'll be driving it in some pretty roads. And I won't be able to talk about it on the next podcast, but I will be able to talk about it soon after that.
Yeah, like Kia still has the Telluride and the EV9. This is sort of the same premium approach, which I'm curious because we don't have a premium electric 3-row like that yet. And the XC90, it's still one of those under the radar cars. Is it the best in the segment? No, but every time I drive it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. Same with the XC60. You kind of forget about them until you drive them, and you're like, oh yeah, no, these are good cars, and they're efficient because of that engine that's in them. But anyway, all right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up because we are breaking the 1 hour mark again. So next week this will be live. We should be back with some more impressions on those two cars we talked about, and then talk about a very busy week ahead. And Kyle will be maybe jet lagged, but he'll be here. So thanks for listening to the Auto Guide Show, and we will see you next week.
So long.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.